Amen. Okay, so Genesis 15, when we did 15, it was God confirming the covenant, right? With Abram. Abram coming with Sarai and Lot to the promised land of Canaan. He had no children, so and in that culture that was everything. But like, how is he supposed to pass on what the heritage if he has no sons? And so he started to ask God about that. God, and he's like, how's this going to happen? He's getting older, and so God then took him outside. Says, look at all those stars up there, right? So shall your descendants be. And then he made they call it when you confirm a covenant, they call it cutting the covenant. And we saw how little that was, where Abram basically cut animals in two, right? And I've heard like how that worked was both parties would walk through together, as saying as if I keep my end of the bargain, or else I wind up like one of these animals. But I heard someone else the other day say that actually, under normal circumstances, Abram would, right? And he would be the one going in. So I'm going to keep my side, but actually God did, which is really significant. God kind of goes through, I'm keeping this covenant, right, with you. And he promised him the land. He promised him descendants. Remember, we got land promised to him as descendants. We have a ton of descendants, but as of now, he has nothing, okay? So everything is looking really good for Abram. And we've noticed about Abram, he gets the big picture right, but he gets some of the smaller details wrong. And oftentimes it's really connected to Sarai, right? Remember the time when he told Sarai, look, why don't you tell the Egyptians that, we're brother and sister, right? That wasn't a good look. Because obviously if God is going to bring descendants from his line, that means they have to stay alive, right? But they, well, here we get the situation again, and it's 10 years. 10 years have passed. So try to keep that in mind. Imagine you were promised something from God. You're believing it. I'm believing you, God. My whole life is centered around now this promise that I'm going to have children. And you're like, okay, 75, getting up there. It's got to happen soon. He's now 85. And that makes Sarah 75. And still nothing. And so evidently they're getting a little bit nervous, right? And so we pick up at chapter 16.
So it's 10 years from the previous chapter closed, Jim? Is that?
Yes, or I should say 10 years from when he first, so when he came into the land, it was 70, he was 75. We're going to see at the end when finally he has Ishmael, spoiler alert, he'll be 86,
Okay.
right? Okay. So now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. Sarai. And in this culture, it's the woman who had the field. And so if the field wasn't producing, then the woman's a problem. But that's not always the case. Could have been Abram, but we kind of know it wasn't.
We know now.
Yeah. But producing children was everything, because your goal was to then bring the next generation in. And so for a woman not to have children was like, well, it's bad enough to where she thinks by far it's better to bring in somebody else, right? So anyway, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. I guess we can assume that when Abram went down into Hagar with Sarai and he got all kinds of stuff, that maybe that's where Hagar came from.
He went down into Haran?
No, into Egypt. Remember that the famine went down into Egypt? Okay. And Sarai said to Abram, behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. All right, let's hear it. We ain't got too far in. Go ahead. There's all kinds of stuff in this one.
And Adam listened to the voice of his wife.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't seem to have put up much of a fight.
There's that too. Okay. And every woman, okay, we got to get to that one. Okay. Okay. So there's that. And by the way, it seems like the writer wants us to notice that because he could have just said after verse 2 where, okay, so then they did their thing and they had it. But no, right? The author puts in, right? And Abram listened to his wife Sarai. And that harkens us back to Adam listening to Eve. Now, maybe like the male chauvinists like to really jump on that one, but you could just look at it from a much more heroic way and say, men, sometimes you step in and save your wife, right? You step in and you help her because she's struggling, right? And Abram, he doesn't treat her like a real princess or queen. He's kind of dull. And then, okay, something that Heather alluded to, I hear all the time. He seems to like the idea. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that what you guys all think?
We didn't argue about it much. That's right. Right.
Is that universal amongst the ladies? That's kind of impression, huh? You think, oh, well, so basically Abram's getting a good deal out of this. Okay. To be fair, which doesn't do any good. But I know when I used to teach this group with college age girls, yeah, they all thought the same thing. They didn't like it. And I tried to, pitch it to them. Hey, well, keep in mind, we don't know what Abe was actually thinking. Maybe he really thought it was a big headache. But to your point, he doesn't step in. He just listens. Maybe he's trying to placate. Sometimes, right? Maybe sometimes we men shoot our mouth off too much, and sometimes we don't speak when we should. Sometimes we get afraid to say anything, right? Let me ask you this, ladies. I'll ask you, ladies, this. Putting yourself in Hagar's spot, or not Hagar, I'm sorry, Sarai's spot, and trying to think. Our culture's different, but the pressure she was under. Would you have listened to Abram? Abram said, yeah. Would you have, or do you think you're like,
What's it matter that she's 75?
yeah, okay, yeah.
Are you saying if the shoe was on the other foot?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, imagine if Abram did what we kind of in hindsight go, Abram, now's when she can use some wisdom, right? Now's when you should be pumping the brakes. But no, yes. Which, by the way, you could conceivably think, and we've all done this, haven't we? Where this is a perfectly acceptable way for God to work. Maybe this is God's plan.
Yeah.
You guys all talk about who we were talking at the table about listening to God's voice, and so he's thinking, maybe Abram's thinking, this is God. God's in this.
I think they both,
Yeah.
not either one, but I think they both
Yeah.
failed
Yeah.
in their faith in God. Her in the original.
Yeah.
By saying that, and I think she was deceived
Yeah.
into saying that.
Yeah.
And he, like you said, should have spoke up right then and there. He should have said, no, this is wrong.
Yeah.
This should not be done. We need to have faith that God's going to lead you to His word.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Right.
That's why I
Right.
say I think both of them failed.
Yeah.
He didn't fail though when Isaac was
Yes.
Did he learn from this?
That's a great point you bring up, and of course that will come later. And maybe what we're watching is, and this in our lives, God is bringing us to a place to where we get it right in the big things,
Right.
and Abram's having to learn.
Sarah's hadn't learned, Abram hadn't learned.
Yeah. To be fair too, for us, okay, so we look at this. What's the no-brainer? You bring in another woman into your household, nothing but death for you. But this was perfectly acceptable in this culture. In fact, we have like records of ancient marriage accounts where that the stipulation was okay if my daughter, if she produces children, you are not to bring in another woman into the house. But if there is a problem with that, and there's three ways you can go. The first way would be to divorce the barren wife and bring in a new wife. Clearly, that's not the case. The second thing you could do was marry and bring an equal wife of equal status. But that's a problem. That becomes a problem in a lot of ways. So the third option is what they're doing here. You marry her sort of, but it's like a concubine. So she don't have quite the rights. But that was perfectly legitimate because the number one thing above all else, culturally legitimate, I should say, was to bring in children so that your generation carries on. Right? That was everything to them. And it's pretty obvious because with Sarai is she's desperate. God bless her. And so
Yeah.
whatever trouble this might have caused her, she's looking at,
Abraham
yeah,
could have also been looking at the fair of Sarah and thinking, maybe if I do this, Sarah will feel better.
yeah. Have you ever waited like you're waiting for the Lord to do something? And then after so long, you start to wonder, well, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe, and you'll hear preachers say this. You're waiting on God, but God is waiting on you. And so maybe, I don't think it, something we look at now and go, oh, he's really blowing it. But that's because we know how the story goes. But in the moment, I've done that where I'm wondering, am I just sitting around, wait, should I be doing something? Or can I help God a little bit? Can I, maybe it's what God wants. Now, we remember what we talked about when we were talking about perception. When your emotions start to get involved, it seems so clear at the moment. It was so obvious to me that Rick Warren was contacting me personally through Facebook, wanting $500. He was African because his English was so bad he couldn't spell. I'm not kidding you, and I couldn't see it. That's a jaw dropper. So your emotions get involved with things. It's amazing what you'll believe to be true. And this is where you need each other. This is why Abram. So you needed one of the two. In this case, Abram to step in there and to do the right thing. Right? You need to help her. She's in a bad way. She's wondering, is she ever going to have children? Is she going to be forever cursed? Yeah. Did you know at the very beginning too? Now Sarah, Abram's wife, had born no children. She had a female, right? So, and Sarah said to Abram, "Behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children." It seems like, okay, so I want children. God's kept me from having them. That's kind of, God bless her.
So she went from believing that God was going to fulfill a promise for her to have a child to that mindset.
It could be too. Keep in mind, the Lord's talking with Abram mainly. So, and maybe, so Sarah's asked to adopt. And you adopt what the husband is going with. And she's doing pretty good at it, but maybe she has to find her faith too. Right?
Because he
Yeah.
they would have had descendants.
Yeah.
So maybe she's thinking, I'm not supposed to be in the equation.
Who knows what she? Yeah. Who knows? We really don't know. But see all of that, and you can kind of draw some applications, and definitely a learning curve.
You know, it was Elizabeth, right? You had John the Baptist.
Yeah.
Was like old, didn't have any. When the Lord spoke to her, it could have been like, oh, maybe she knew the story of Abraham and stuff like that, and then so the New Testament people could draw on them.
Yes, I
So
think
I'm
so.
not saying that they had to go through all this.
No, I
But
think
I'm
you're right.
saying it might have been easier
Yeah.
because they could have seen that.
Yeah.
That's what the Lord got them through. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Good
Yes.
stuff.
It's also possible that she, or they both, apparently, ultimately, they both might have thought that they had misunderstood God, or after so long, maybe they're thinking, well, maybe we just didn't understand him right.
Yeah.
It has to be done differently.
That's right. You can kind of put, so one thing, it's always good to learn. We don't know what they're thinking, but we can speculate for like application to go, well, I've been in situations like this where I've waited for a long time now. That's the thing, about 10 years, and you begin to wonder, second guess everything. Wonder if you've done everything right, you know, and of course, what I don't fully understand because I'm not a woman for one, and this culture's foreign to me. But the whole idea of not having children, what the pressure was.
Also, I noticed that the first thing she thinks of is that the Lord is preventing her.
Yes.
Where we're today, we probably don't think of that as the first thing. We think, oh,
yeah,
there's something wrong with me medically. I gotta go get it fixed.
Well, you bring because now yes, our whole that's where our culture is so different. We're a scientific culture, and that's indicting in its own right. We don't think anything about God first. We're thinking, I got a medical problem. I need to go see Doctor So and So. Not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying the Lord comes sometime way after.
Well, we don't really give a thought to, well, who controls your body? And
Yes.
how your body works, right?
Yes.
God does, right?
And underneath that, we don't say it out loud. We're not supposed to because we're Christians. But we're trained in it. Underneath all that is the progressive, we're different. We're better now. We progressed as a species.
Yeah.
Cavemen, right? So we're above that. We think this is medical. Yeah, there's God, but there's medical. See? And that's something that, trying to kind of break ourselves of that, actually, in a lot of ways, because we're not better than. In fact, part of our culture now, I think everything is we're starting to question that. We've been in this, we're progressively marching to, political Zion, so to speak. And now we're having this crash and burn effect. And you see a lot of people kind of going back to the ancient path. That is why you're seeing a big resurgence of young people, particularly going to Catholic and Orthodox churches. Like we're going back to the ancient path because maybe we're not so smart. We're going to a hell in a handbasket, so to speak. Anyway, okay. Verse 3. You want us to wait for you, Heather?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, yell aloud. Okay. So after Abram had lived 10 years, there we go. There's our time marker. After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. So this is not good all the way around.
When God talked to them before, He did make it clear that it was through Sarah, right?
Yes, he has been making that clear. Yeah,
So that it's not just that Abraham's going to have
right.
children.
That's right. No, he's coming from your own body. I should go back and look to double check. He definitely has not made any mention that you're going to have to go through the surrogate. That's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so we have got. Why do you think? Why do you think Hagar? Why do you think he looked? She looked at Sarai the way she did.
You see,
And do you blame her, or do you think she's being too mean? Yes, I think she's too mean.
I think so too. So she had a position of power at that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah,
right?
she's
So
the
she
one that made-
treated her differently.
And basically, yeah, you're the one the problem. We now know for absolute sure you're the problem.
Yeah.
Because I cranked the baby out in seconds
And
flat.
not only that, in her eyes, she was blessed by God,
Ooh.
where Sarah wasn't.
Ooh, brutal.
She might have thought she'd be the favorite.
Right.
Now, is it okay for me to think? Couldn't Sarah figure that out? That was going to happen. But then again, but God bless her. That maybe when you get that desperate,
That's what she said.
huh?
She was killed by her.
You figured none of it comes with a comfort. But you know what though? How many times have we done something, and then afterwards we tasted the bad fruit of it? We're like, what was I thinking? And so,
Her to blame and deal harshly with Hagar was not right.
so okay. First thing Sarai does is she takes full responsibility for herself and apologizes. No, she doesn't. She blasts Abram. That's not a good look. I mean, he had a part in it, but basically his part was like the opposite, where she was being aggressive and taking charge and trying to basically move the train forward. Abram was too passive and not doing what he needed to do.
To me, it seems like there's a little more going on here because Sarah is saying, "May the Lord judge between you and me." So I think she thinks that Abraham is allowing Hagar to see things the way she sees them, that Hagar is better than her, and that Abraham is not dealing with Hagar in the proper way that Sarah would want him to do.
Could be, yeah.
Maybe he did lift up Hagar at that point. Maybe Hagar at that point had a different position.
Well, yeah. About. Well, okay. So
anyway,
yeah.
Sarah thought that Abraham was allowing Hagar, or at least encouraging it in some way for her to be able to treat Sarah that way. That's why she said, "May the Lord judge between you."
Maybe she was perceiving that,
Yeah.
and maybe he wasn't actually doing it.
That's what I would go.
She was
Yeah.
perceiving that he was.
I was gonna go with the first part just because if you go too far with it, then you've literally got to like put stuff
We
in
really got to try to
that we
figure out
have.
what these people are thinking.
Well, and that we can't say because that was not in there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Abram, I guess I won't say correction, but maybe that's not the proper term. Maybe that's why he said to her, "Look, she's in your control.
Yeah.
You do with her as you wish."
Yeah. And see, so we'll get to that. So yeah, and I think So that you could see that. So maybe that. So she's hurt by the fact that now Abram, look what she's doing, and where are you? And by the way, that is, that has been part of the problem of Abram. He has not
Right.
stood in there, and so he is okay. So he's one of the he's a I've been in this place, right? You're a step behind all the way through, and that's what he is. He's and then okay. So what do you think about his reaction? So she's fired up now, and I'm gonna kind of laugh a little inside because yes, when the missus is really fired up, you start to get nervous, as a guy, and so he's like, well, she's your mistress. Do what you need to do. What do you think about that?
I kind of hear it as like he's saying, "Look, this whole thing was your idea in the first place. It's your mistress. Just go somewhere else and leave me alone."
Yeah.
That's what he would have said to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Hagar, if she conceived, she thought she was going to be on the same level as Sarah, and instead of
Yeah.
still being.
Yeah.
Or higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course,
The wife, that's why
according to and maybe the reason why Hagar's, again, we're just totally speculating. Maybe the reason why Hagar is really looking with her contempt because Hagar realizes she's not going to be on her level and that she's not going to keep the child. The child's going to be Sarah's and Abram's. And so, you could, I guess of the three, you could be more sympathetic with Hagar, right? Now she feels.
she has to give up her child.
Yes.
That's not
Yeah.
an easy thing to do.
No, I'd imagine. And by the way, you could, if you're somebody here who has a problem with the Bible, you're not liking this whole thing. You're not liking slave, servant. You're not liking the fact that this lady Hagar is just basically being used, right? You're not liking any of it. And is the Bible condoning this? And the answer is no. In fact, we'll see towards the end. But the Bible is telling you this is how it is, but without necessarily saying, yes, this is what God approves of, because it's really kind of a tough deal for Hagar, right?
Did Hagar have a choice to be a servant in this household? Why was she there? Was she sold into slavery? Did she go there because she wanted a place to have a living? Maybe she was a single woman in that time and needed a home, so she goes, "I'll be your servant.
Yeah.
You feed me and give me a shelter." And we don't know why she was there, but
A lot of times that's the way it is. We don't want to confuse slavery back then, the slavery as we think of it, like in the 1800s. It wasn't, you would often become a slave to, it's like a extended work. You would do it to survive. And so who knows what her background, why she was there. But anyway.
I think there's also a difference between a servant and a slave. I think there's a difference between it. She was their servant, not necessarily their slave.
Well, I wouldn't work with it to my kids. You're my servant. I said, no. Yeah, I don't know how she would think it was, but clearly she was like, we'd say she wasn't on Abram and Sarah's level.
Right.
Handmaid, yeah, yeah. Mistress, I have. I kind of think that, again, so Abram's just kind of like trying to, almost like how Josh put it. Josh put it the American way, right? It's just trying to absolve all. Well, look, she's yours. Sir, do whatever you want, and so now you might say that Abram's not sticking up for Hagar. Oh.
It doesn't say they pitched the idea to Hagar and said, "What do you think about this?"
Right, yeah, none of that.
So,
Absolutely, yeah, none of that. And so, Sarai takes it out on her, right? So this then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. So, but then here's what's interesting. Now we'll read from verse 7, and we'll go to we'll finish the end of the chapter. The angel of the Lord found her, that's Hagar, by a spring of water in the wilderness, because as we read, she fled. She was being treated so badly, she just booked it, which that's pretty desperate too. I mean, I imagine running away out to the, it says wilderness, I think it's like a desert, right? Much for food, you know. The angel of the Lord, or messenger of the Lord, found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. That's the bad news. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring, so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord had listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God of seeing. For she said, truly, here I have seen him who looks after me. Therefore the well was called Beer Lahairoi. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram.
So God must have told Abraham the same thing. You should call him Ishmael.
Yes, or got the account from Hagar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that Abram names, remember, going back to your Adam and Eve theme, and when Adam was naming the animals, that's a way of what I'm looking for. Taking ownership. So when you name your child, you are, in other words, he is part of the family. He's my son, Ishmael. Almost kind of makes you wonder up to now. He thinks all is great. This is him.
But they don't ever say how old Hagar is. Act like she's.
No, they don't.
I was reading like was she more like 30?
Oh, because if she was young, you'd be kind of going, now you, then your lady spidey senses would really, oh yeah. Yeah, I see. So you're hanging out with Raquel Welch and then Sarah, yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I'm getting it now. Yeah. Okay. What do you think about
Hold on.
no.
Because what would a 70-year-old woman who's not feeling the best run to the desert and hang out?
Yeah.
They'd be like,
Yeah.
growing up. I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think she had to be younger.
You would think younger.
I've never thought
But at
about
the same
her
time, like,
age.
how old were they living to be at this point?
Well, Abram
Yes.
lived to be 175.
So is 70 an old man?
Yeah.
Or is it kind of?
Well, and to your
Yes.
point, maybe if you're thinking, which is totally understandable for them, they're thinking they're not having children also because of age. I don't know. We know at some point it will
Old
be.
enough to think that way.
So to look at Hagar, because Hagar's younger, it makes all the sense, right? Wouldn't make a lot of sense if she was older.
Yeah, I just never thought about that.
And you know, you want a servant younger. I mean, you want somebody who will vacuum up all the dirt in the desert. Okay, never mind. The angel. See, here's what's interesting. We kind of could pass over it. So Hagar is not really respected. I mean, there's no job upgrade for her. Yeah, she becomes a concubine and she has a child, but it's not going to be hers. But yet the angel of the Lord, or messenger of the Lord, really, because remember, angel is just a messenger. It could be a human or it could be a divine being, and you have to kind of go by the context. When we see angel, we always just think that, and you have to go by the context of what it is. But suddenly, this being, person, shows up and finds her. So think about that just for a minute, okay? So we've been kind of noticing how the Lord appears to Abram multiple places, but how big that was. That was rare. And yet, look at who shows up to meet Hagar, right?
She was in distress.
Yeah,
She must have been crying out.
yeah.
So shows that God cared about the servant as well as the master.
That's one thing you get. Yes. And let's face it, a lot of people have been in distress, but yet God, yes, little. So she was important, and her son was going to be important.
Did God ever correct them or scold them that says you shouldn't have done that?
No, we're going to get to that. No, that's the most of it. In fact, here's what Abram gets out of it. He gets his name changed to Abraham. We'll read that next chapter, where, oh, I guess now you're a father of many nations. No, that is so remarkable to me. God never seems to. It's almost like as if he's given the keys to the kingdom to Abram, and he's like, "Think of what you're doing, son," and he's incredibly easygoing on him.
You know, later on too, Abram asked the Lord, "Will Ishmael not be that person?"
We're going to see that next, yes, because that's exactly what he's thinking.
That one son.
Yeah, that's right. Because if he's 86, so by the time he has Isaac, it'll be another 13 years. So 13 years is going to go by, and he's thinking, well, obviously God has said by his silence, this is the way we're going. And all of a sudden the Lord shows up. Time's up. And it's almost like, so like God almost like he's waiting. So that would mean that if Abram came into the land at 75, he waited 25 years for the promise. And in the middle of that, he had a little relapse. He tried to make it happen on his own. Of course, and then Monty, right, there's some interesting connections, right, with Ishmael and Arabs or people groups, right? And I'm bringing this out because usually when we go into a Bible study, and okay, we with the with Islam and the tensions we have, we like to bring out, well, you know what? Abram really screwed up. Yes, he did. And because he screwed up, he created a lot of problems. Yes, he did. And because of his son, oh, the trouble Israel's always been in. Okay. But when we read through this, God blesses Hagar. He shows up and speaks to her and says, "You're going to this," and he's going to be a blessed, right? God hears is going to be the name Ishmael. And we're going to notice, find too, that Ishmael is going to be circumcised. So the promise is going to come through Isaac. But I think sometimes we hate so much on Ishmael, but it's pretty clear to me God loves Ishmael. God loves Hagar. No, it wasn't his fault. No, it wasn't.
Well, it says his hand will be against everyone,
Yeah.
and everyone's hand will be against him.
Yeah,
He'll be a wild man.
yeah. Now, there's another way to look at this, though. He's going to be a nomad, is really what it's saying, too, which is actually good. Because you remember, who was the city boy?
Cain.
Lot.
What?
Cain was the original city builder, yes. In fact, there's a whole background. The gods who came down were the first city builders. So cities got. But so he's not going to be a city builder. He's going to be, but yeah, he's going to be a wild donkey. But it's not really meant to sound as bad as it does to us. I mean, I know we don't want to be called a wild dog. But I don't think it's trying to say that. But he's going to be a nomad. And interestingly, we'll read later on. He's going to have 12 sons, 12 princes. Like, what's up with the 12? Right? 12 everywhere. I just like to kind of take the other side of it. Want to take things. God will love Ishmael. He's just not the chosen one. And God loves Hagar. It's a good observation you brought up, Heather. She's a servant girl, but God don't care about none of that. Right?
Yeah.
That's not a thing for
Because we
him.
think of like Abraham and Sarah as being these special,
Yes.
God anointed couple that's going to bring them, the
Yeah.
Messiah's coming through them.
Yeah.
But yet, he sees Hagar too.
Yes.
Hagar's important to him also.
I'm glad you brought that up, and we'll get to the next chapter because maybe it has also something to do with Abram being the promised, right, given the promised blessing, Abraham and Sarai, well, it'll be Sarah. And all those that are under their protection get the blessing too. Right? Maybe that's why the angel of the Lord said, you need to go back. Go back. Go under their authority. And she'll be blessed because we're going to see. We're going to see as we read chapters 17. In fact, that might even help. It might even help us if you remember. There's a particular passage in First Corinthians, and Paul is talking, and question is like, so what if you have let's say a wife is a believer, but the husband is just a pagan, not a believer? Should you divorce him? And he says no, because the believing woman actually sanctifies the husband and all the children. And the same way the husband's a believer and the wife isn't. The husband sanctifies. It's like a blessing kind of goes through the whole family. So we're kind of seeing that here. I think that's we'll see it more, I think, when we get to chapter 17. Okay. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God of seeing. Didn't you want to like name this place Bir Lahai-Roi, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the God who sees me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how come?
Because this was kind of like, I knew that God was paying attention to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a long time, I always thought he favored you.
Yeah.
True, I did. So when I had this place,
Yeah. I get you.
Yeah.
I like it.
like God was saying,
Yeah.
I've seen
I
your
like you
heart
too.
all these years.
Yeah. Well, maybe she was seeing something. I mean, she was not being seen. She was there, basically produced a kid, and then after that, yeah. Okay. All right. So who do we make? Again, so we talk about the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord talks as if first person God. Some think that maybe this angel of the Lord was actually Christ, right? But you could understand it as the angel was really the go-between, like an ambassador, and speaking for. So anyway, all right. I'm hearing buzzings all over. Is that my phone or your phone? Anyway, it's me. All right, chapter 17. When Abram was how old? 99 years old, right? So this one chapter, that's why I could notice that a lot of time has passed. Okay, so wait a minute. So does that mean then that Abram has not heard from the Lord in 13 years? You know, you think about sometimes you go through that dry spell where you just kind of go through the motions, you're wondering. You would get the impression that every time, every day Abram was seeing some kind of an experience. No, there were lots of time where just the same old mundane, right? Okay. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram. And there we go again. He appeared to him and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. That is, make as in firm up. We're going to firm this covenant up. Okay? Walk before me and be blameless. What does that look like? Does that apply to us today? You tell me, Monty.
That's a tough one. Blameless is pretty
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. Same word used for Noah. He was perfect in his generation. He walked with the Lord. Now, do we take that to mean that he was perfect, that he never goofed up? Hard to imagine that, huh? If he asked his wife, she'd probably name off like 10 or 15 things Noah did, right? Ask Sarah, she'd name 100. So we know that can't be the case, right?
Maybe like walk with me and be blameless, grow with me, or like the more you spend time, then the closer you are, then you're less likely to say, oh, that's over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because your heart's kind of changing.
Yeah.
Doesn't it even say in the Old Testament talking about Abraham that you're righteous because of your faith? I think it talks about that. Right?
Yes.
It's not that you don't screw up some stuff, but where you're putting
15
your
verse 6.
trust
And he believed in God, he counted him as righteous.
And he reckoned it to him as righteousness.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
He knows we can't be perfect.
Yeah. And you know, and it gets a culture thing. We always trip over ourselves, right? Because our mantra is, God saved us as we are. We're not perfect. We're slugs. We're dirt clods. And so we see blameless. That's the well. Why can't it just be too that? Yeah, we're called to walk before the Lord and to live rightly before Him. And when we fall on our face, we confess our sin, and He is faithful and just to forgive us our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness, right? And we're good. Isn't that walking blameless? And so if you walk and you don't think, you might have done something wrong and didn't realize it. Well, when God brings it to your attention, you confess it, right?
it's kind of like when we hear kind of the promise to Abraham, like what he's promised to us is like that we're right before him. If we trust in Jesus, but we don't believe that a lot, right? Or
Yeah.
we would live and think like you're describing.
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
To say, I'm right before God,
Right.
Let me live that way and believe it. Right?
Yeah. And that's a great way to put it, because obviously God, well, first of all, the Lord obviously believes that Abraham could do it, or he wouldn't have said it. There are actually a lot of believers who think that we can, and so we're really saying is, well, so God's telling you something you can't do, so you're going to live in perpetual guilt. Well, no. He really believes, and that this is what he's called Abraham. It's kind of interesting too, right? So if you asked, did God ever reprimand Abram? Not that I could. The closest you can get is him just saying, Abram, live righteous and blameless before me.
So is there a chance that, like, did he really even mess up? Or is this, maybe that was just all okay, and maybe that was part of the plan? I don't know. You always hear the lessons when you talk about, oh, he messed up.
Yes.
I guess probably, right? But is there a chance that,
Apparently it probably was part of God's actual plan, because the angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar and told her,
Yeah.
"Go
Yeah.
back. You're pregnant. You're going to name him Ishmael.
Right.
So go back to where you're supposed to be.
Right.
Have your child, name him Ishmael." So maybe that was all part of the plan to begin with.
If you just look at the scripture and you just run with it, you do get the impression that Abram's okay. I've heard it said on the other side that with these ancient history books, unlike the ones that we would write now, you were supposed to kind of look for situations. God would kind of give you kind of signs where, ooh, this doesn't look good, right? And you could, oh yeah, that's a problem. But he wouldn't necessarily point out, like he wouldn't say, oh, that's a problem. It'd be up to you, the reader, to kind of go, okay. And so we could see some maybe lack of trusting the Lord in some places there, and well, we can also see, and we know this firsthand. We're going to see where the heartache, nothing else, the heartache that Abram's going to go when Sarah goes to boot Ishmael out, kick him out, and Abram's like, no, it's my son, and God says, listen to her. She's doing. Holy cow, that must have been a heartbreak, right? And we've known that too. We've made decisions, and oh man, we didn't realize the time. Now it's really so there's that in it. But to your point, Josh, this is one of the most fascinating things to me. It's like God works His perfect plan and will through imperfect people. And think about how can that possibly be? If you were to say to me, okay, Jim, you got to do this perfect. You got to make this table. You got to make everything perfect dimensions. Well, then I'd be thinking, okay, my tools got to be perfect. My eyes got to be perfect. Everything has to be because, right? If I have one flaw anywhere, so I don't know how God does that. Somehow He uses, us, and He works His perfect plan, even though Abram, and he never yells at Abram, never does, never gets upset with him. So yeah, that's a good one, Josh. You, I don't read in here where God's very. In fact, we're going to see, right? So verse 3. Verse 2. I'm going to make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. Okay. Now I think Abram's kind of treading on water what he's about to do, but they're friends, right? So what does Abram do? Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. Now, I get a kick out of that. It's like, almost like to me, God's saying, well, Abram was a high father, but since now you got Ishmael, you're going to be a father of a lot of nations, so we're changing your name. You're going to be, which God kind of promised that with, right? Kings are going to come from you.
Well, he would have been a father of many nations had Ishmael not, because there were
True.
12 sons.
Well, those 12 sons aren't nations. They're going to be one nation.
Okay.
But there was kind of allusions to it.
So we're the part of the nations that he's the father of also.
Well, we're the part, right?
Because
And on all nations of the earth will be blessed through you. Yes, that's where we come in. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. For I've made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish. So you don't sound like he's very mad, does he, Josh? That's what I find amazing. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Okay? And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins. This is where it's great to be a lady and not a guy, right? I admit the ladies got the harder role of producing the children. That one's a hard one, but this one is no fun neither. And that shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring, both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So now he's kind of confirming the covenant even more. And the males are to be circumcised, every one, from 8 days old.
I guess I wonder why that was the sign that God wanted them to use.
Yeah.
Like, why that?
Why that? And unless Abraham's walking around naked, nobody's going to know that he has this sign. So who's the sign supposed to be for? Right? It can't mean that everybody else sees.
No, it has to be a personal
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding and a personal sacrifice.
Yeah. The most personal.
And I found it interesting that when he made that covenant with him, and he was specifically saying anyone that was born to you in your household, anyone or the other that bought with his money,
Yes.
servant.
Yes.
So basically, he was saying any male that's in your household, period.
So it's not ethnic, is it?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not necessarily just to that one ethnicity. It's whoever is bought with your money or whoever is
Yeah.
born of your blood in your household needs to do this to show the sign.
Yeah. They come under, so that's where that idea of the umbrella. So it would be the same with the wife, right? She would be with the circumcised male. She would be under the protection and blessing of the covenant. And no matter who you were, foreigner, whatever, you were to be circumcised as well. And then you would get the blessing as well, right? That's what's kind of interesting about it. The family jewels, right? That is, again, the same way with the woman producing children. That was the man's, when I think we talked about this when we'll see it later on in Genesis 24, when Abraham was going to make a covenant with his servant, an oath. You're going to take an oath to go get a wife for my son Isaac. And our Bible says, put your hand under my thigh. Well, actually, no. It means put your hand on my family jewels. Because that is the most important thing for the man. That's where the children came from, most dear. And so that's why it makes sense, I guess, that the circumcising would be the removing. I'm not entirely sure. I've heard different reasons why. Removing of the flesh. I know it talked, yes, I remember it talked about, well, it was different. I guess God told Joshua going into the land to remove the reproach of Egypt because they weren't circumcised then. But anyway, there's something to that because remember that one story, one of the more bizarre ones, is after God called Moses and everything was looking good, and then his wife, Moses did not circumcise one of his sons. Don't know what. They're all that. And it said the Lord was going to kill Moses. And she circumcised her son. What was her name? Moses' wife's name? Oh, God, tip my tongue. Anyway, and she threw the foreskin. Again, now it speaks, I think, the Bible at his feet, but really the foreskin was kind of at his groin. And she said, "You're a bridegroom of death to me," or something like that. That's one of the weirdest things. Bridegroom of blood. But the idea of the circumcision then, maybe I heard that it could mean, in other words, it was a sign to Abraham of obeying God, right? And so then that would imply that Moses kind of was not going to obey God. No, I don't know. Anyway, this is what God says. We're going to confirm the covenant. This is going to be the sign. This is what you're going to do. Oh, and by the way, you notice we read through here, as you brought out, Randy, everyone in the family was to be circumcised. Notice there wasn't any of this, well, we'll let them grow up and we'll see if this is what they want to do, that they want to get circumcised or not, and then we'll talk about it and have a nice long talk. No, they are to be circumcised or cut off.
Period.
Period. Yeah. And I suspect, now if you're young, I think I want the 8 days old, Calvin, because I wouldn't know what's going on. 99 years old? No, thank you. No, thank you. Oh, good grief. All right. Okay, so that's. And God said to Abraham, verse 15, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. From what I'm understanding, it goes from princess to more like queen. Maybe God's trying to send Abraham a message, right, and how you're to treat her. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. Nope, you're fine. You're fine. No worries. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. So one, he wants Ishmael to go, come on, got Ishmael right here. This works, doesn't it? I got the idea right here. I'm getting the kick. I mean, Abraham, he laughs, right? And so anyway, no, God said no, verse 9, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac, which his name means he laughs, right? So either it's God laughing back, right? Or it's, oh, well, you laughed and Sarah's going to laugh. Or there's going to be laughter of like incredulous joy because they're actually going to have a child when they're like 100 years old, right? I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. When he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house or bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day, Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the men of his house, those born in the house, and those bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with them. Nobody objected. Nobody said, I got rights. I'm independent here. All right. Okay. So what do y'all think?
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine when Abraham first kind of took this in? It's like, The rest of the plan was probably like generally positive, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you imagine when they're all listening? Yeah, looks at the other. What did he just say?
The meeting over this one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was dead silent.
Can we get clarification on
Let's clarify what's exactly this procedure.
Well, Jim, did they know about this kind of thing, or did Abraham have to explain it to them? Have they done it in the past? That it was a lapse and just quit doing it?
You know, I don't know. I have read where there's an Egyptian rite like this. These Hebrews, Abraham and the family were not the only ones who did this. I don't know. It just that's a good question. Um,
They only come out here.
hmm. Yeah.
Come out here.
It just yeah. Then they all obviously consented. I don't know how they looked at it. I don't know if they looked at it as well. We don't got a choice, or it's more like maybe it was somewhat of an honor. I mean, in one way, look, we're being marked out. I mean, we're if you're a foreigner, I don't know how you look at it. I just don't know.
But it sounds like he did Ishmael first. But can you imagine a 13-year-old dad? What you think you're doing?
Yeah.
You must have had some knowledge about it. You don't just go do that without
And know what
knowing
you're doing.
anything.
Yeah.
So there must have been some kind of a knowledge behind it.
Right.
It probably had ways of like herbs and things for numbing and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
They was going through some wine.
Well, yeah. Well, you're definitely no pain, no gain. So you're being marked out, and I think there must be something to that as well. This is, and I mean, something too. The Lord appears to Abram again. I mean, he shows up, so that carries a lot of clout. I'm sure, Abram, and that was part of the point when God shows up to talk with Abram. Well, okay, God shows up to talk with him. You listen to what he says, and you listen to what Abram said. And Abraham says what God says, and so guess what? We're doing it.
Ask Saul how it worked out when you don't listen to God what he says.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. And they also, I'm sure, saw themselves being blessed. We are a blessed people, and God's making promises to us. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, and of course, Paul will then kind of run with this, right? As far as like, when did Abraham receive the promises? Was it before he was circumcised or after? Because circumcision became such a big thing. That was kind of the entry point for all Jewish males, right? I think it was a circumcision, dietary laws, Sabbath, temple, and I'm forgetting one. I knew I would. These are what marked you out, right, as being a Jew, like your badge. That's why Paul, right? That's why we'd say as Christians, our badge, we have only one. That's our faith, right? Um, Something else I was going to say to that as well, but okay.
Could have saw it as an honor. Wow,
Yeah.
God, this is what God has
Yeah.
asked us to do. To be basically in His club,
Yeah.
or in in His
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
What an honor.
Yeah. Yeah, because like we've been saying, in the pagan world, that was absolutely unheard of. The gods never came and told you anything. That's why you did all the crazy sacrifices. You were mainly warding them off. mainly, you didn't want a personal relationship with them. You wanted them to stay away from you. And so you did everything you could kind of protect you, or, if you're a particular witch doctor or whatever, you had certain rites and potions and stuff that might get the pagan god to somehow make the person you want to fall in love with or fall in love with you, whatever. But mainly, they were just dangerous. Gods were dangerous, and so and they were petty. They were real petty, like us. And so you were looking to do everything you could to make them happy. They'll just be cool with you. So the idea that a God would actually show up and tell you, this is what I want, this is what's going to happen. Well, that was like huge, really huge. So obviously it's not uh, by accident the Lord appeared to Abram. They keep emphasizing that, and only to Abram. I don't. Well, I take that back. We're going to see next chapter, right, where the Lord is talking with Abram and telling him that Sarah's going to be pregnant, and Sarah's inside 10, I guess, and she starts laughing.
She can hear him talking to
Yeah,
Abraham.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was going to ask a question about that. Is that Abraham laughed, right? And then Sarah laughed, right? What kind of relationship they had? Because that'd be the first thing you get, as in, I go home and said, Lisa, this is what went down between, and I laughed, but she laughed too. It's like they didn't talk. Like it's the very first time she heard this ever said. That's why I was kind of looking at.
You know what? Not only did you bring it, I think it's Aussie brought that up, and it clicked in my mind. Isn't it kind of the opposite of what happened with Zechariah, John the Baptist's dad, and Mary, right? In that particular episode, Zechariah is like, "How's this going to happen? Well, are you questioning me? You can't talk." Mary seemingly asked the same thing, and he treated her like kid gloves. Oh, this is how it's going to happen. Holy Spirit's going to overshadow you. So, and we're always scratching our head. Well, how come Zechariah got that?
Zechariah was doubting, and she
No,
just
but
wanted the details.
but in this case,
You can't laugh at God.
but in this case, Abraham laughs, and God's just going with it. Sarah laughs, and he calls her out on it.
Because it's different kinds of laughs.
That could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sarah laughed because she was doubting it.
Yeah.
Zechariah was doubting. Mary was asking because she was wanting to know how it was going to work out. She wanted the details of how it would work out. Zechariah was doubting that God was going to do it. So two different ways.
Well, that's a way to look at it, and that very well might be right, but I've heard that. You read it, I'm kind of like, well, it could be. That was a little easier than this was. Abraham definitely laughs, and God's like, no, it's happening. Sarah chuckles under her breath. I call you, and she did kind of say, if I'm not mistaken, whereas if I remember, okay, Abraham says, first he says, me, I'm an old man. Me? And Sarah, she's not a spring chicken neither. Whereas I think Sarah kind of like more, I'm gonna have a baby with that old geezer. I think the Hebrew, if I could be mistaken, and almost like it, she was implying, we haven't been sleeping together for a long time. How do you think that's going to happen? So maybe there was a certain kind of a bitter. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. To me, it seems like Abraham was more of a laughing, kind of like, really, that's going to happen, kind of like.
Or
like a kid would do, where she was doubtful.
I get the impression, and I don't know. We don't know what's going through his mind, but when he said about Ishmael, it almost seemed like, and you could understand it, Abraham wants Ishmael to be the child. He loves it. He's been 13 years now. Why can't Ishmael be the one? Look at this. He's right here. He's 13. Look, he's handsome. Good looking young man. Strong. God said, I heard you, man. He's going to be a great nation too, but not him. And maybe that's why God, maybe, Abraham is one of the very few where God refers to him and Moses, a friend of God. They were friends. But he didn't, he wasn't, we don't know how God's thinking. Remember he said this, he's about Sarah. Sarah laughed, and he goes, what did Sarah laugh? Sarah goes, oh, I didn't laugh. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you called her out.
Oh, yeah, you laughed.
Really like, I don't know if he's really like getting on to her, or he's like almost like ingesting. Oh, you did.
Yeah. So, and yeah, why does it? Yeah, God wanted to let him know.
everything.
Oh, I heard you. You laughed.
I know everything.
I
What
thought
are you
that was
thinking?
cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. And he said, oh, yeah, you laughed.
Yeah. Yeah, you also went, Lord, what did you mean by that? Was that more like a, oh yeah, or was that more about, oh yeah, I heard you. You laughed. What were you thinking?
Like he didn't know what she was thinking.
Yeah. So, okay. So, the moral of the story. Paul said we don't have to be circumcised. Too late, we already are. But that's one good thing. What's the big idea? What's the big idea that you learn? You tell me one big idea, because there's a lot. Trust the Lord, yeah?
He tells you something. He's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Have patience.
Have patience.
Patience, stay faithful.
Yeah, have patience.
Your timeline and God's timeline is
Yeah.
not always the same.
Yeah. And what do we do? What do we do about, what do we do about when we get that pressure, like, is God waiting on me? Is it possible that sometimes he is?
Yeah, I suppose it is possible, but like you said, you need to just pray about it and be open to actually listen
Yeah.
and be diligent about what the answer is and where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So you know for sure, okay, that's not right, or that is right, but that's definitely God leaning this on my heart,
Yeah.
not something trying to deceive.
Maybe the idea is like taking shortcuts. Like, for instance, we could say pretty categorically, man, if your wife says, hey, maybe you should get a second wife, you go, no. Right?
It never works out.
That's no. But because in this case, Abram was told something specific. But taking a shortcut, like you're trusting in God for a job or something, or trusting him, right? And you're trusting him for income, money, whatever, and you suddenly see a way, but it's kind of shaky, shady. But then it's easy for you to say, but man, Lord works mysterious ways. He used Babylon to take out Israel. Maybe it's what's right. Yeah.
Like you said, you just got to be patient.
Gotta be patient.
Think about it. Pray about it.
Yeah.
Is this what I need to do? You know?
Yeah. It's a good point. And about
I need it.
Yeah.
But if it ain't what I need to do, I'm gonna do it. You know?
It's good to have like a community like this, because then you talk with others. Hey, what do you think about this? What and then ask them to pray. What is God telling you? Because we need help on ways to see things, right? All Sarah had was Abram, and bless her heart, she was panicking, and I could totally see that. That's another lesson we can learn in both ways. Like for you ladies, when you see your husband having a hard time, you figure between the two of you, one of you gets it right, right? And learning to listen to each other and to pray, because sometimes, how would you say, we're emotionally compromised.
Right.
Yeah.
We're under duress, and we need the other to help us. And then we need to listen. Sometimes listening to your spouse is important. And
Listen, take into
yeah,
consideration. Yeah, the man's supposed to be, and it's been, I guess, ordained to be
yeah,
the head of the household,
yeah,
just like Christ is the head of the
yeah,
family. But that don't mean you ignore.
right.
It means you take into account and you listen.
Yeah,
If, if the other one has a better idea, then be
yeah,
willing to admit
yeah,
it. Say, hey, that's a better idea.
yeah.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, so I guess we wouldn't take from this, man, right, that it says that Abram listened to his wife. Well, that doesn't mean we should never, right? We should never listen to. Been a lot of times I go to Linda all the time, and just the other day something about work where I just felt like I was gonna tell my dispatcher goes, hey, uh, I'll take more days. I really probably don't need it physically, right? I like doing this. And it's like I'd push myself, but I was liking the extra money too. I had some more books I wanted to buy. And so I tell Linda, I go run this by. I go, Linda, you know what? I'm thinking about telling my dispatcher to let me to work Monday. And Linda says, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that and just wait. They ask you for work. And so I went, all right, I'm going with that. And I went with that. And they asked me to work, which is what she said. But no, that was really good because I really wanted to. But I think what she was saying, because she's looking at me dragging. See, I look in the mirror and I look beautiful. I don't look in the mirror, right? I just cut my hair. But she's looking at me and seeing I'm dragging, and so these are all things that are good. And we should throw one other thing on there. And I've actually said this to her, like, well, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. There's been times when earlier in our marriage where Linda would be having about herself, and she would be getting pretty emotionally wild at me. And I told her, I said, Linda, I need you to have your head in the game because you're my one that I look for help. If you're not around, you're off in left field. I'm like feel like I'm just driving. And the same her with me. If I'm not, what's the old Baptist way? If I'm not prayed up, right? If I'm not spiritually in the game, then I'm no good for her. And she needs me ready. We need. That's why it's so important that we are well grounded, right, in our faith. That's why it's always good to start the morning off with prayer, right? Scripture and all the things, right? And if we know if we're in a situation where we haven't done well, we're confessing it to the Lord. We're making amends wherever because we want to be spiritually fit for the people around us, right? Because in this case, I think Abram he really dropped the ball big time. He didn't get in trouble. As I read it, Sarai, she really needed some help. I don't know if she would have listened to him. It's not fair to her. She's probably going to yell at me when I go up there to heaven. But she was pretty emotionally hurt. I could see. I could imagine it.
He could have been thinking, if this helps her,
Yeah,
he hates to see her that way.
yeah. I mean, the best thing I could say, okay, so as a man, for us having work and things like that, this is who we are as men, and to lose all that would be hard. After a while, you're starting to wonder, who am I? Am I any good? Can I do anything? And you struggle with that. And for a long period of time, you start to lose it a little bit. And this is where having somebody with you can kind of help you to see, right? Help you to see. Um, so anyway, okay. Um, if you ever get stuck out in the middle of the desert with no water, look for the angel. I don't know. Anything else? Get it all. Okay. Next week, we're going to be doing. First, we're going to be doing. Isaac is going to be born, finally. we will comment on this. That actually, what's interesting after all this waiting, all these chapters, 7 verses. That's it. And then we're going to have the intercession of Abram sticking up for Lot, but not really saying it. Saying it without saying it. Okay. Any prayer requests? Prayer requests for you? And hope.